There are all sorts of ways of communicating the idea that you like something in German, or even that you like someone, or maybe that you love someone. Some of these over here, for example, and a couple of these ones down here too. And of course it can be quite confusing because they're not always interchangeable. Oh, and there's one form there that I'm going to recommend that you don't use. Can you see which one it is? Let's find out. Grüß Gott, hallo, ich bin Billy Badger und das ist Bausteine 2. Herzlich willkommen. Well, there's really only one question you need to ask yourself if you want to choose the right way to communicate the idea that you like something. Maybe it's two questions, I'm not sure. But either way, it's this. Do you like something or do you like doing something? That's all you really need to know. Let's take a look. If you like something or someone, then we can use the verb mögen. It's a modal verb with a difference because all of our other modal verbs are often used to modify other action verbs, so there'll often be two verbs in a sentence. But with mögen, it's good to remember that we're really only going to use it as a main verb, and there won't be another verb in our sentence. It's only used with nouns, so with people, places and things, like in these examples. Ich mag Christine, ich mag Österreich, ich mag die Berge und ich mag Züge. And of course, if you don't like the things, then we can mostly just add in nicht right after that direct object. So it's a pretty easy verb to use, even though it is a little bit irregular. Let's look at how we conjugate it. Ich mag, du magst, mag, sie mag, es mag, wir mögen, ihr mögt, and sie mögen. So, although it's irregular, it's only irregular in the singular forms. And as I said, I'd recommend you don't use it with another verb. There's a better and easier way to express these ideas, and this is where gern comes in. If you're tempted to use another verb with mögen, then it's probably because you want to say you like doing things. And to do this, we just construct our sentence as normal, as if you're just saying that you do that thing that's described by the verb, and then you communicate the idea that you like doing this by adding the little adverb gern in right after the subject and the verb. And here's a few examples to show you what I mean. Here you can see I'm hiking. Ich wandere. And since it's something that I like doing, I can express this easily just by adding gern on the end. Ich wandere gern. And as you can see, the word gern follows straight after the subject and the verb, even in a sentence like this one. In Österreich fahre ich gern mit der U-Bahn. Here, gern doesn't follow the verb, but just comes straight after the subject and the verb, which are generally right next to each other. So a couple more examples perhaps. In der Früh trinke ich gern Kaffee. Or ich lese gern deutsche Romane. Or maybe Christina geht gern mit dem Hund spazieren. So in this way, we can see that there would be a difference between these two sentences. Ich mag Bücher und ich lese gern Bücher. In our first example, I just like books. We're not saying I actually like reading them, which of course might be the case, but that's not what we're emphasizing. In our second example, it is. Here I'm saying I like reading the books. Well, maybe that's all you need to know, these two forms. And you can probably express most of what you want to say with these two forms. And if that's enough, then danke fürs Zuschauen und tschüss. But if you're interested in all of the other options that allow us to express ourselves with a bit more precision, then stick around. And most of these options are going to involve liking someone or something. So they are variations or alternatives to our example with mögen. And so that we've got them all in one place, here's a list. And as you can see, we often use them with things we like or people we like. But when do we use which one and what meaning do they convey? It's going to be hard to provide hard and fast rules because language, as we know, doesn't really function in pure black and white. And it's always changing, particularly with the influence of the English usage on language. But let's start with the verb that we've just been using, mögen. Well, it often expresses an established preference. We often use it with people, food, or anything really. You know the person or the thing and, well, you like it. So you can say, ich mag ihn, ich mag sie, ich mag das Hemd, or ich mag Mozartkugeln. So in this way, it's pretty similar in the meaning to our next option, which we can also use with people or things. And here you'll notice that we're using gern, and it follows the thing or the person that we like, the direct object. So you can say, ich habe ihn gern, or ich habe sie gern, maybe ich habe das Hemd gern. It's often described as a synonym of mögen, but used with people, my feeling is that there's often a little more affection involved than when we use mögen. Between ich mag dich und ich habe dich gern, it's the second one that's probably expressing a slightly more intense feeling. And when we say that we don't like something, then we're probably more likely to say ich mag das nicht, rather than ich habe das nicht gern. Although, of course, both are possible. Well, this brings us now then to gefallen, the first of our slightly more advanced options, where the thing that you like is, rather oddly, not the object, but the subject of the sentence. And here, of course, we're going to need some dative. So if you see a shirt that you like, then you can say, das Hemd gefällt mir. What we're really expressing is that the shirt appeals to you. Again, we can use it with people. You could say er gefällt mir or sie gefällt mir, which means that either he or she appeals to you. Essentially, what you're doing is expressing a positive or negative reaction, your reaction to something or someone. And it's often based on a reaction to its appearance. Or perhaps in the case of a song, maybe it's your reaction to how that song sounds. If you're referring to a person, then you would often be describing more of a superficial response to someone's looks. You don't necessarily know this person, but you like the look of them. The difference becomes clearer, I think, if we compare it with the statement ich mag ihn or ich mag sie, which is more clearly based on the fact that you know the person, or at least you're familiar enough with them to say that you actually like them. And this is actually, I think, similar to the statement ist mir sympathisch or sie ist mir sympathisch. A statement that you're only really going to make about people rather than things. It conveys the idea that someone has made a favorable impression on you, either in the long term or the short term. It's a likable person. You're expressing your response to the way someone is, at least in your eyes, and one that's not so much just based on their looks. This brings us to an option that we're only going to use with food and drink. If there's food you like, then you can maybe like the way it tastes. So this form can be very useful. Das schmeckt mir. In other words, something tastes good to you, or you like it because it tastes good. Again, the thing you like the taste of is the subject. So I could say, die Kekse schmecken gut, or der Saft schmeckt gut. Finally, we come to the ultimate in liking with our verb lieben. I'm sure we're all familiar with the statement, ich liebe dich. This is a verb that in general will mostly just use for describing your feelings about people rather than things. So in this way it's different to English. And also more used for romantic partners rather than with friends and family members, where we might be more likely to say, ich hab dich lieb, which is maybe just a little bit less intense, but can still be used for describing a strong affection or fondness for anyone you hold dear. So if we're trying to establish a hierarchy of our affection for someone, it might look a bit like this. Well, of course, your mileage might vary. Und so, meine Lieben, ich hoffe, das Video hat euch gefallen. Das war's dann für heute und auch für dieses Video. Danke fürs Zuschauen, alles Gute, auf Wiedersehen und tschüss.